Hey, hello, hello, hello. I am live. I am waiting. Hopefully someone will join. Okay, let me see if I can bring this live chat up. Hello, everyone joining. I'm just doing the minute of sort of chatter before we kick off. See if I can arrange my screen in a way that I can see my notes and see the chat room. All right, if you can see and hear me, please send a quick message just to let me know that all the techie bits and bobs are working just fine. Tell me where you're joining from today. And if you could do me a favor, Jonathan, the organizer of the language show, just just told me that this is one of the most bookmarked talks of the day, and I am crazy competitive. Therefore, could you make me really happy when you get the chance and bookmark this talk so I can win at a competition that I've just made up in my own head? Thank you very much. Now, when you are joining the chat room, ooh, there we go. Ah, there we go. We've got the chat. We've got the chat. You're here. Okay, so if you could bookmark me, that would be nice. And I have got a lot to say and not a lot of time. So hopefully, I'm so pleased that you are joining me today to hear a talk that has grammar in the name. I am very proud of you for coming along to join me for this talk. This is really brilliant. I got some grammar fans. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some bits and bobs about grammar. We're just going to kick off, and the talk is called Give Me a Shout If You Can See the Slides. Can I see the chat? Yes, I'm getting it all working. Good, good, good. Hello, Stephen. Hello, Chris. Hello, Nima. Slides look good. Okay. So the name of this talk is The Grammar Painkiller. And we're going to talk about sort of a new approach, an alternative approach possibly to learning the language rules. And I am Kirsten. Hello, my name is Kirsten Cable, and let's call me a coach for independent language learners. So typically I work with adult language learners who are coming back to this. And if somebody feels like they are smarter and that they've got this after working with me, that's my happy place. I have been in my business for 10 years. My business is called Fluent Language, and I've created a lot of materials, language courses. We're counting 15 courses now, podcasts, blog article. I host language learning retreats. So there's really a lot that I've done with language learners. And personally, I love learning languages as well. I never know what number to say because, like, how many languages do you speak? You all probably know how painful the answer to that question can be because you never really know. But my main languages are German, my native language, English, which I speak like this, French, which I did at university, Welsh, which I've been doing out of my own passion for 8 years. I've got a bit of Luxembourgish, bit of Spanish, bit of this, bit of that. Did Mandarin Chinese for my lockdown project. I would love to know your languages, so tell me in the chat your languages. Okay, before that, I'm going to hit into this language coach word because we probably have a few MFL teachers here and all that kind of stuff, or independent teachers. So language coach is an interesting descriptor. And for me, this means I'm interested sort of in the holistic journey of the language learner, looking at the environment that the person is in, looking at sort of emotional requirements, the psychology, motivation, personality, learning styles, their career. So this isn't just about doing a study plan and then you do lesson 5 and then you do lesson 6. This is really about how do you make this so that language learning is in your life as an enrichment, because I believe language learning makes us so much richer. I love showing people how to make learning easier. And typically the kind of materials that I create, so the courses I create, they fit around the traditional methods, right? So I want to really create materials that are useful for learners and not just be a language course, but really show you the deeper level. And that's kind of where we're at with this talk as well. Got a lot of German learners in the chat. Hello, hello. Awesome. Right. If you wish, you can download a free, I call it an action guide. So it's a PDF that goes along with this presentation, and that's free for you that I've made. So you can take your notes in there and kind of recap everything I have said. And that is at fluentlanguage.co.uk/language show. You can watch this now. You can get this now. You can get this later. That's going to be available for you whenever you're ready. Okay. And I'm going to just head into this grammar life. Okay. So we're going to do the definition thing. What is grammar? So for the purpose of the presentation I'm giving you today, the way I think about grammar is that, grammar rules, grammar tables, all that kind of stuff. It's a description of how people communicate. Somebody has gone in and thought about the systems that underlie how we communicate and started describing those. And that typically is where a grammar comes together. So it's actually an extremely, like a grammar book is a massively fascinating document. Grammar is a vital skill for learning any language. I thought about this. If you can contradict me, please do. I can't think of a communication system, a language system signed, that would not have a grammar component, right? Grammar is really essential, and it is something that we as humans understand already. There's a lot about how little children learn languages, how little children make specific types of mistakes, etc. But something that people will say to me is, I can't do grammar, I don't understand grammar. I'm sure you've heard people say this as well. And in truth, in order to communicate with somebody else in a language, you have to have an understanding of grammar. It is sort of innate to us as humans to see, to have an understanding of grammar as a communication system. And I find that really encouraging because, again, people come to me and say, I can't do this, this is hard. It's not that you can't, it's not that your brain doesn't have the systems for building this, because literally it's so essential to us. And a lot of people, don't like grammar though. So for a second, I just want to have a look at, why do people who love grammar, right? So this is in the ideal. Oh, okay, Caroline, like right in the chat. Caroline, tell me if these reasons resonate with you. So just got a comment saying, I love grammar. So why do people who love grammar love grammar? I personally, to be honest, I like grammar. I do. So there are lots of reasons why you would love grammar. And I'm hoping that after today, if you work with students or if you're a learner yourself, you can get a sense of this and you can start feeling into this as well. So first of all, Maria in chat says, organizing chaos. That is it. It makes things predictable. It makes things clear. People say to me, grammar gives me clarity. It always helps me understand things better. The second point is, once you've got the set rules and patterns down, what grammar gives you as an emotion, as a feeling in yourself when you are working with a language, is actually a sense of relaxation, because it is no longer chaos that just comes flying at you. It's something that makes sense, right? It makes the world make sense. And some people, I love this, really find grammar very playful, because once you've got a rule, you can bend that rule, you can use that rule, you can start finally expressing yourself. It's very liberating, because grammar is the tool that you use in order to say what you truly want to say. It is the tool that you use for being able to express yourself fully, right? We all want this sense of fulfillment of truly expressing ourselves in a target language, and grammar is a tool that you need in order to get there. And I find it really reassuring in that way. So I can see in the chat that a lot of people feel this as well. Now, if you are scared, nervous, you don't enjoy grammar in your target language, now's your time to raise your hand. Now's your time to be seen. All of us, I think, have this moment as well. Like, this is the ideal case scenario where grammar makes things predictable and relaxing. But Who finds grammar a little bit uncomfortable at times? Or who here works with people who find grammar a little bit uncomfortable? So to me, there are three main reasons why people don't love grammar. And they are: grammar can be a bit painful. Grammar can be really boring. A lot of people say that, right? A lot of people say, "Oh my God, it's so dull," right? What on earth am I looking at here? And I remember I did Latin in school, and I remember sitting and just having to copy out tables, copy out endings, blah 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 blah, blah for hours after school. And it's just boring, right? Secondly, grammar can be daunting. And then grammar can be really complicated. So we've got here people saying, yeah, complicated, the terminology, right? There are lots of reasons. So let's have a look at this number one, the complicatedness. And this is really, especially when you've learned a grammar rule and now you've got in your head, oh, this needs to be done this certain way. Like my many German learning friends in the chat, you probably know, you've got to have X, Y, Z and things. And here is a quote from, this is a real quote when I first taught my grammar course, that somebody sent me this question. Holding on to the noun with its number and gender, the verb with its tense, number, gender, and reflexiveness, plus the agreement of pronouns, adjectives, and adverbs in the context of whether it's a positive statement, a negative sentence, a question, or an imperative, means my mind is doing cartwheels. And word order is where I fall down in getting the parts of the speech lined up each time. But we know German word order. So I love this so much because this quote is, it shows us why grammar is so painful and so complicated. The person who is trying so hard, who is doing this amazing mental exercise of holding on, to knowing what a noun is, knowing what a verb is, and the adjective and the adverb, and and then they're saying, oh, but the word order, right? There's always one thing that trips you up. And what I really want us all to feel here, and the pain here with grammar, is we try really, really hard. It's not that we're not mentally trying. It's just, it's basically uncontrollable. Like this is uncontrollable in your mind when you're actually trying to communicate, if you are trying to actively do it all. So grammar is too complicated. It also can be kind of boring. And here I feel like, this is the thing. When I became a language teacher, I taught the way that I was taught. I kind of was like, okay, you're a teacher now. And I was an independent, I was organizing my own classes. I'm not in a school system, but I'm still going, okay, everybody, here is the textbook. These are the rules. These are the corrections. And I remember exactly, I had this lesson. This is really early on when I was teaching German, and I'm explaining to people something that to me was fairly simple. I think it was like the accusative case, like really basic stuff if you were a German learner. And I could see the way I was teaching it, they hated it. I was losing people. People were zoning out, and they were looking at me like, you've just done exactly why I hated this in school. And I thought, oh my God. And I came out of that lesson and I remember crying. I cried. I was so upset, right? So it just wasn't working. It just was not working. People weren't happy. I wasn't happy because I'm not here as a language teacher in order to make everybody hate me or hate the language that I so love, right? So I started doing things differently. I didn't do rules first, and I started bringing in new ways of teaching that really don't teach the rule out of context necessarily. I have this new style. It gave people more confidence. Everybody sort of understood the complex rules much, much more. And it's because I just took all the boring stuff and went, you know what? We're not going to memorize. I don't care if you know the third person ending plural in the imperative, like whatever. Like I know there is no third person ending plural in the imperative. But say the first person, and I don't care. We're just gonna stumble along and do it the fun way. And I definitely felt like there was a real there was a real shift with me, with my students, which is why I now advocate for not teaching grammar in what I call the boring way. And I'll tell you more about the approach shifts so that hopefully this starts to make sense. Now, the third pain point with grammar, and as we had somebody in the chat allude to it as well, like you're all language lovers, you're all pros, right? You're very confident, and I just love Emily says, like, but why do you not always perform the way I want? So not everybody has this level of confidence, and this is really where I see a lot of people falling out of love with language. And some of the issues that I see is, number one, use of jargon. Right? We really use a lot of jargon when we start talking about grammar. Generally, the teaching, to a certain extent, lacks reference to the native language. So we had somebody saying, got a phone call right now. We had somebody saying that they like grammar even in their native language. And for me, one of the greatest gifts that I got given is that as a native German speaker, I was in the German school system, and we did a lot of German grammar before we ever touched another language. It is helpful, folks. It is really, really helpful, and I wish there was more of it. And something that I think is really extreme, and it really puts people off, is this sense of, I said earlier, isn't it a bit petty to care about an apostrophe? I don't know. I'm not taking sides here, because I am also that person who sees the apostrophe in the wrong place and goes, right? Inside of me. But, and this particularly with people who are English teachers to speakers of other languages, there is a lot of uninvited correcting. There is a lot of uninvited commenting. And again, I'm not arguing to drop all of these aspects. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying, let's not pretend we're not asking people when we're teaching them about prepositions and adjectives and, the imperative, that when we're teaching them essentially a whole other language where they have to remember all the terms. And let's not pretend that that isn't scary. Let's be a little bit more compassionate. And I think we can improve often when we are dealing with other people whose grammar isn't strong, even if it's in English. I think we can improve our warning system here for people, and we can improve how we approach giving people this sense that something is correct. That I'm just saying. Okay, getting off the hobby horse now. It's not all doom and gloom. Let's have a think about what might work. So I want to tell you more about how I teach now, or how I switched to teaching mostly German, because that's, again, the language I focused on the most, but I've also taught French, that I think is helpful. Okay, so my hypothesis here, I feel like, I don't know, at any point I feel like this chat room is going to explode on me, but don't cancel me. But I think maybe it's impossible to learn the rule and know the rule in the way that you want to know the rule. And by that, I mean, if your rule is something like the infinitive has en, and then the first person ending is e, and then the second person is st, and then the third person ending is whatever the heck it is, t, that's German. You can know that rule and you can say that off by heart, but it is impossible to know that rule in the way that you truly want to use it in a conversation right away, right? And I think we're expecting that from learners, and learners, much worse, expect this from themselves. So when we're talking about producing language when we're talking about producing written language, learners rely on two things, I think: reference materials, if they allow themselves, and what I call declarative knowledge. No, hang on. What is called declarative knowledge? I've made this up. So declarative knowledge is when you have a fact in your mind and you can reproduce this fact correctly. When you're producing written language, you have time. You have time to actually go, okay, hang on, first person ending is an E and an S and T, right? You can run through je vais, tu vas, and all that kind of stuff. until you hit the right, like in your mental slot machine, the right numbers come up and you say, aha, that's the correct ending. Or if I'm writing a text in Welsh, or I'm doing a fill the gaps exercise in Welsh, and I can see a mutation there, I can go and open the dictionary and look up the word and say, that's a feminine word. I need to do this kind of thing afterwards, right? We just have time. Time is good. Time allows us to take these grammar rules and give us this sense of control. But control is an illusion. When you are speaking a language, your reaction times are way shorter, and your mind is processing what you're just hearing. So it's just, you're not writing letter to the editor exercise. You are actually communicating. That's truly what most of us want. We want to have conversations in our target language. And when you're in a conversation, your reaction times are shorter, and you're working with the procedural memory, so the working memory, essentially. And that means that's great that you've memorized the rule, but now you have to know it, not reproduce it from memory and kind of work through it. You just have to know it in your bones to get this right. Right? And obviously this is possible, but it takes a long time. And what I see with learners is that they expect to memorize a rule and to reach this knowing stage. So for all my teachers here, I hope you'll forgive me. For hilarity, I looked it up in Spanish, but essentially I went and looked up Bloom's taxonomy, which is this idea of how knowledge comes into us, like how learning works essentially, and how we teach then accordingly. So if you're a teacher, you've probably heard of this. Remembering is at the bottom here. So conocer, remembering, then we have understanding, applying, analyze, evaluate, and create. And then when you can create with something that you've learned, you've truly learned, right? It's truly there. And the expectation here is that learners kind of complete these stages in that order, in order to understand a rule in theory before you have a chance to see it in practice. And that, in my opinion, with grammar is an issue, because if we wait for the understanding, the comprehender step, like the true understanding, the knowing, before we then go apply, etc., that's the way, like most textbooks, like we're going to talk about conditionals. Okay, now here is the rule of conditionals. Okay, everybody got it? Yes. And I know, because I experienced this a lot in my class, and I experienced this a lot in myself, I will say yes, because I know I have to say yes so that we can move on to the exercises, but I don't really understand it until I actually hit, the higher stages here, until I truly apply what I'm doing. So if we wait for people to understand and take in the rule as it's written in the book, if we present people with that rule, a lot of people get stuck there and then can't move on, and then that hinders learning. So my theory here is that what we need is two things. We need the aha moments, right? You've probably experienced one. Please tell me in the chat if you've had that moment where you've got, oh, this is what it's trying to do. This is the point of this rule. And then you also need blocks. And by blocks, I mean sort of chunks of vocab, chunks of language, so that you don't have to go, okay, je vais, il va. You just go like, il va à l'école, and then you just like, boom, this is how we say this. This is how we say this. And you've got a block of pre-formed grammar, kind of like in Lego, you've got a pre-built thing that you can just slot in. And this is the way then for you to function in your target language, maybe even before the aha moment comes, because so often it is the applying, it is the using, it is the seeing everything in real life what really gives you the aha moment. That explanation in the book, tell me if you have a different experience. I don't think that explanation in the book is where we have the aha moments, and I think that is what we assume often happens. So my way of going about grammar with this aha moment focus that I try to work on, that I really advocate for, is so I've read the research about this, about understanding and sort of what on earth happens. And I read somewhere that understanding, like truly learning, internalizing this, the aha moment, it was described as restructuring knowledge. You know what I mean? Like restructuring. And that means a new way of seeing things, a flash of understanding. A flash of understanding. And that is it. Like you need the aha moment. So the way I go about this generally is with students, I try to just put practice and play first. So really just present them with language. Let them figure it out. I don't care about the level. Like you're there with the student. And I know I'm kind of saying the beautiful, like an ideal case scenario, and you've got a class of 40 people might not quite work the same. But generally, if it doesn't work to throw rules at them from the book, then we might as well let them play, right? So let people play, whatever, give them fridge poetry. Make the errors freely, just make all the errors. And then we do want to correct the errors. So typically what I will do with a learner, if I've got them at sort of a B level, is I look out for something that they consistently get wrong, where I can really see like they think it works this way and it just doesn't. And then I will try and pick out that one thing and say, there's something here. There's something here, right, where we can look at. And I will just try, if it's possible, if I'm in an ideal case scenario, I will demonstrate correct usage rather than necessarily saying to them, you're doing this wrong. I will try and demonstrate, just like really answer them and change the sentence, like repeat the sentence back, change the sentence to the more correct use of grammar. Ideally, or I will just present them with a lot of language, and a lot of you are mentioning exceptions in the chat. This is it. Like, you want to wait for the gap. You want to wait until somebody gets to the point where they're saying, why does he keep doing that? Why does this keep happening? Because that is when you're so close to an aha moment, right? And then you want to ask the question, like ideally as a learner, go and play, really pay attention to when inside of you you're starting to go, why is it doing, like, what does that mean? Why is it changed to this now? That's the gap. We love the gap. Then ask the question, like really ask why does it do that? Because now it's not so boring. Now it's not a random rule. Now you actually need to use this. And then ideally we want to have the aha moment, and then you've got that new knowledge, and then you want to apply it to your existing knowledge. So then really go away and use it and start making those sentences. And again, basically go back to step one, practice and play more, right? So we want to go play first. And what I see really often is this sort of explanation first. It's like if somebody tells you all the rules for, when, I don't know, this, I probably have ADHD, but if you have, if somebody gives you directions for going somewhere, you know how it's really hard to conceptualize what all those directions are. Like you turn left at the third so-and-so, and then at the lights, and you really have to, it's really hard to put that in. Whereas once you've driven the route a few times, or if you're familiar with the area, everything becomes easier and directions fall into a context and they start making sense. And that is what we're trying to generate here. So these aha moments, to me, the typical questions that lead to them are why? Why questions are great. Why does something change? What could be the purpose? Why is it doing this now? And then start asking, what is the logic? So essentially, that is my summary of what I call curiosity-driven learning, really, or play-driven learning. So we don't start with rules and curriculum. We start with curiosity-driven learning. And my sort of 3 rules for learning grammar, if I am giving any rules at all, will be number 1, like the rule of thumb. Like, so what if there's an exception? Like, so what if there is an exception? The key is, the most important thing is that we understand the concept of what's actually happening, what the mechanics are. And then if there's an exception, it always trips me up, that's a need to know basis, right? Then you can learn those, but don't let them throw you too much. Trust that, because we know this from small children, like if small children will say, oh, and he go to the school, you still know what that person is trying to say, right? So we're not taking exams every day of our lives. Number 2, rule of memorizing, which is, to me, know the difference between cramming, which is, really cramming all those rules into your head, and this sense of acquiring, right? This sense of, okay, I have really thought about what it is I need to know. And I'm not against memorizing here. I'm not against it at all. I think you can think of yourself as the curator of your linguistic collection of knowledge. And then number 3, the rule of thumb for learning a language, that the way I approach it is aim to make mistakes. Mistakes are good. Mistakes are a sign of progress and a sign of trying. Don't be perfect and silent, because there's too many people out there never even attempting because they're too worried that they'll get like one exception wrong. And imperfections are a sign of learning and are a sign of success. Applying what you're learning, it doesn't have to look like, doing a million drills. To me, mistakes are a sign that you are learning, especially if you can find a way to smile and, enjoy your mistakes. There is lots of creative way of using it. So you can listen to new songs. I've still got the link in there for if you want a Spotify guide for language learning, feel free to go to that URL. You can watch TV, you can cook. I love cooking from a new recipe in a language, and discover usage examples. So if you've seen the previous talk, that's my project partner, Josh, who just gave you lots of ideas about AI tools. And we've been doing a lot of work and created AI language clubs. So I'm just going to plug that. But usage examples, again, this idea of just because you haven't fully understood the rule, this kind of hypothetical whatever, just because that rule hasn't quite sunk in yet doesn't mean you're not allowed to go out and actually use the language and to see it in use. That is, to me, so, so important. You are allowed to do advanced level stuff on day 3 of learning a language, if that's what you want. It's probably not going to work, but there's no, like, we just hold people back in these silly ways. And I think that's not necessarily a given. Okay. Now, we had the apostrophe conversation before. Allow me to also challenge a very common myth that is particularly running rampant when we talk about learning grammar. And that is the myth. I really think it is a myth that when you get something correct, that signalizes you're smart, right? That getting the rule right means you are, that's the intelligence that we are giving here. And I know this is a bit of a descriptivist ramble, but I want us to, when it comes to grammar rules, keep an open mind and question, particularly when strong dialect is used, particularly when our language is, when a certain language variant is considered above another one. I've got the example here of Regina George, fellow millennials. You might know what I'm talking about. We've got her friend is really trying to make the word fetch into a thing. Like, so she goes around saying, that's so fetch. Ooh. And she does not like it, right? Because to a certain extent, it challenges her power as queen bee school person. And at some point, she really gets annoyed by this to the extent where she says, like, stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Who is she to decide whether fetch is going to happen? And who are we teachers to decide if mandem's going to happen? Whatever, I don't know. I can't, like, language change is something to welcome, is something to observe, is something to describe, and is something that makes our language, and it represents who we are as humans who communicate. It makes language lively and fun and exciting. And yes, of course, we can't just throw all grammar rules out the window tomorrow, and no one's ever allowed to speak like this again. But language change is natural and normal. Like in German, there is a theory that the Genitiv case, one of our 4 cases, is going to go out of usage because, to be honest, the dative does the job just fine. And language will always evolve to describe things in the simplest way possible. So let's stop trying to make fetch happen. Let's stop trying to rule whether fetch happens or not. And keep in mind the bigger picture, again, especially when correcting, because overcorrecting is one of the worst things that can happen to our students in terms of harming their confidence. And see if we can find ways of communicating that more variants of a language, more ways of saying one thing are valid. I've got a quote here from the book Becoming Fluent, which I love. And this I bring into many of my presentations because it's very meaningful to me. The real test of how well you speak a language. Many of us think, I'm going to go and do an exam. I'm going to go, like, are you a C2 speaker? Does that mean you're good? Are you whatever? What are your levels, CFR levels? They all just describe, but really the real test of how well you speak a language is how easily you communicate when you are using that language and the pleasure you derive from speaking it. Not whether you get every single ending right. I have done, I'm trained as a Sekretärtrilingue, trilingual secretary in Germany, Europasekretärin. I wonder if that means something to anybody. And when I did all of my exams, I would lose significant marks for even forgetting one accent or one little E when a word is feminine or masculine. Does that really affect how well I communicate in a language? Does that affect the pleasure? Actually, it affects it negatively, right? So to me, the heart connection, this is how we get our students excited. This is how we get people learning. This is how we as learners keep going. And this is really where we can start to see result. Okay, quick reminder again, fluentlanguage.co.uk/language show. I'm sort of coming to the end of my presentation and I've managed to keep in time, so I'm very pleased. And we've got time for Q&A and I'm going to come off my slides. But yeah, please go ahead and do download the little PDF. It's like 3-4 pages and it just kind of takes you through all of this again. I've put a little self-reflective exercise in there as well, where you can kind of go through a sense of statements and really feel for yourself what works, what doesn't work. And if you are interested and want to take this further, I've got 3 online courses that are grammar related. I'm doing all of them 30% off this weekend. I'm not going to plug them too much, but Crack the Grammar Code is, if you like this presentation, you're going to love Crack the Grammar Code, because that is essentially what, this is my, like, how I think grammar learning works. And then these are much more rules, explanation, reference courses, one for German learners and one for French learners, because that's what I can do. Okay, I'm going to come off my slides. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Is there anything that you would like me to come back to? Is there any slide that you want to revisit before I come off of them? Just going to give you a second to check. Got Donovan saying, totally agree with this quote. Just going to head back to. Okay. Download the PDF. If you go to the website, hang on, I'll put it in the chat as well. There's a form, you submit an email, so you subscribe to my newsletter essentially, and then I think it goes out in an email, but it also directs you to the page where you can click on a button and it'll download automatically. And if you want to review my slides, they are there as well. Okay, I'm gonna come off of slides. I will have a look at the Q&A button first. Nobody used this one. Okay, brilliant. So I'm just going to go through the chat. If I don't answer your question in the chat in the next 5 minutes, please put it into Q&A. Does all you have said refer to learning a foreign or second language, or does it apply to one's mother tongue too? Oh, that's interesting. The thing is, if we are looking at the process I described, which starts with play and lots of usage and lots of exposure, that is how you learn your native language typically. Like, because you're little and we don't have the kind of, most small children don't really have the mental capacity to, be told this is the conditional, I don't know, adverbial prepositional, whatever the hell. Like little kids, we don't teach them the jargon, do we? We don't teach them the rules. So you actually do the experiential learning. Typically, there will be less of the asking why, because it's, again, small children are different kinds of learners. So they will accept a rule and an instruction without as much why, typically. So I would say that yes, of course, because the way we learn is the way we learn. But your native language, I mean, we're going into like Chomsky territory here and like really linguistics territory, is debated. But typically, the idea is that I think still is accepted. I'm not a research academic now. Is that your brain and your ability to understand how language works and then to understand your native language, that's inbuilt, and you can develop that really, really easily, and it is how you learn your native language. So yes, I tried to look at the natural kind of process of learning languages and see how I can translate that into foreign language learning. Long answer, short question. Okay, did I post something in the chat? I tried. Let me do that again then. Okay, hopefully you can all see this message. Okay, what is the best German grammar reference book with exercises for English-speaking adults, please? There is okay, I actually know this, and I have a really strong recommendation. It's this green and white book. It's about this thick. It's so good. It's Deutsche Grammatik. It's just called Deutsche Grammatik. Not very creative. Absolutely love it. I used it so much when I was teaching German. I recommended it to all my students, and to me, is the best German grammar book that you can get. It is written für die Mittelstufe, so it's for German teenagers. So if you want to get it in German, there is you can get it, and on the website they've got explanations and everything in English. But the book itself is written for German teenagers, and I love anything that, again, removes the jargon and tries to explain things in a way that works. So that's just my teacher recommendation there. Lingolia, Deutsche Grammatik, I think it's called. And hats off to the author of that book. It's great. Lingolia is the website. So if you Google around, hopefully you should be able to find it. It's Heike someone. I cannot remember the name of the author. Okay, just going back to see your questions. Okay, Anita says, look, I want to become a translator. So rules are important, aren't they? I agree with you. This is not the talk where I'm telling you throw all the rules out the window. That's not what we're doing here. The thing about translation, again, and also most grammar rules, over time, you'll internalize how things work. Like, I speak fairly correct English as a German native speaker, so it's not impossible to learn this. I'm not advocating for that. I'm advocating for doing it, I guess, slower and in a different order. So for you wanting to become a translator, yes, I agree that, because you want to produce language that fits within the expectations of what your product is going to be. And I'm going to refer back to the point in this presentation where I said written language, producing written language gives you the benefit of having time to process in yourself and to double check what it is you are producing and to consult reference material. So it's just different to speaking, and you've got a different way of accessing memory there, really. Okay. Catherine says, is there a book that you would recommend for primary or secondary teachers in terms of teaching grammar strategies in a student-friendly way in general? Can I recommend my own course? Is that bad? Okay, so that is, I have looked at a lot of kind of researchy stuff in that course and brought it all together. So I will obviously recommend that. It isn't a book. I am not a secondary school teacher myself. I'm an independent language coach / teacher. So I don't have anything that really is specifically in the classroom. I think we do not have, just generally speaking, we do not have enough research about language learning strategies. And I love the way you're saying child / student friendly. It is the way that I work with my people. It is the way that I teach. However, I don't think there is enough kind of talking about that. So there is a book. I'm trying to remember. There is a really, really good linguistics book that is, I think it's called Teaching and Researching Language Acquisition, that I think is really brilliant. And I think the academic who's written it is Keith Johnson, and it sort of brings together a lot of research. It's not the world's easiest read, though. It's not like a bedtime read. So yeah, I'm just going to recommend Crack the Grammar Code. It's very popular with teachers. Okay, could you share the link to your grammar download again? Absolutely. Okay. Do I have any questions that I have not got to? Do you have any questions? I really want to thank you for being a kind chat room. I was kind of nervous bringing this here because it feels a little more higher level than, you know, just here are some exercises and all that stuff is. And it's got that kind of descriptivist feel feel to it, of really me saying, just because someone is correct when they are speaking doesn't mean they're smart, and we should, you know, really be careful about overcorrecting. And I have seen, I'm so sorry, especially ESL teachers, sometimes there is this sort of, that's why I brought Regina George into it. Like, we can use grammar corrections as a bit of a power move, and that is, when we see people do that, I think we need to be really, really careful about it, because it takes away a speaker's confidence and it takes away a speaker's motivation to learn. Okay. Which languages do I speak? How did I learn them? Okay, French grammar course. Okay. These are all the courses that you can get from me. Thank you so much for your interest. Thank you. Genuinely, thank you so much for your interest. Okay, I've never ever done anything on time, right? So we're not going to start today. I'm going to overrun. Yes, so I am a German native speaker. Die ersten 20 Jahre meines Lebens habe ich in Deutschland gewohnt. And then I moved to England, and I've always just been, no, I haven't always lived in the UK, but I've always been like very Anglophile. I am the right age for Britpop. I'm a massive Pulp fan. So the language was a huge step into a different world for me. And so that's kind of my languages. I'm from really near France. I'm from the Moselle Valley. So French was my second foreign language that I did in school. French is probably the one that I learned with the least passion and the most kind of this rules-based thing. And it is my sheer stubbornness that has led me to doing my university degree in French. Welsh, I would say is, oh, hi, Moyen from Luxembourg. Welsh is my heart language and has been for the last 8 years. So I love learning Welsh. It makes me so happy. So I still learn languages now as a hobby, as a fulfillment. And I advocate for languages being a really wonderful way of enriching your world and enriching your life. That's a good line to end on, isn't it? Okay. It was so much fun. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I hope you are able to download the PDF. You can also message me, you can email me. This is my email address. I've just put it into the chat. If you want to know anything more, if you've missed the sign up, if something's not working tech-wise. Yeah, this was great. Thank you so much. Wish I could save the chat somehow.